Hi, I'm Lauren Healey. I've spent the best part of 10 years or so working in different ways to tackle the climate crisis. It's included creating a mini festival exploring urban food sustainability, fundraising for Extinction Rebellion, and delivering a panel discussion exploring colonialism and climate justice. I'm now a research project manager in the School of Engineering at Newcastle, and I'm managing 2 climate projects. But for most of my career, I've worked in the creative and cultural sector. I've worked with artists and creative organisations to deliver incredible, impactful work. But I wanted to open with this quote from Amitav Ghosh. "Let us make no mistake, the climate crisis is also a crisis of culture, and thus of the imagination." And it nearly sums up what I've been thinking about for several years. The climate crisis is just as much of a failure of imagination as it is of excessive carbon in the atmosphere. It's unconscionable that we, and I'm talking primarily about Western, so-called developed countries at this point, have in a few short years made the conditions that for large parts of the world, large parts of the planet, are going to be uninhabitable. I'm going to talk about this further, but first I want to take us back in time. I'm going to take us all back to 1972. David Bowie was in his Ziggy Stardust eras. TVs were still excessively large, and men's fashion was interesting. But against this backdrop of glam rock, large pieces of teak furniture and dodgy polyester, a book was published that summarised the findings of a team of interdisciplinary scientists who had constructed a model of the planet's interconnected systems, and that book was called The Limits to Growth. It was written by Donella Meadows, a pioneer of systems thinking, and the book presented the findings of a technical report produced by the think tank, the Club of Rome. The scientific team had constructed a computer model of the planet's complex and interconnecting systems, including population, agricultural production, natural resources, pollution, and industrial production, and others like education, healthcare, investment, and technology, which all interact and affect each other. They used the computer model to demonstrate how all of these connected, all of these are interlinked, and how the changes in one part of this system impact everything else by simulating various future pathways. So, for example, to grow more food, you can use more technologies and fertilizer to increase crop yields, but this would require more energy and create more pollution that therefore is going to harm human health. There were 5 core conclusions. First of all, the environmental impact of human society has become heavier. Some of this is due to population increase, but importantly, it's due to the amount of resources consumed and pollution generated per person. But we've also got to bear in mind, obviously, at this point, that consumption is very different depending on the person. For somebody living in the US or Western Europe, for example, that's going to be much higher than someone living in, say, Malawi. The use of resources isn't shared equally, and richer nations absolutely use more. Second point, our planet is physically limited. We can't continue to use more physical resources and generate more emissions than the planet is capable of supplying in a sustainable manner. We can overshoot the planet's capacity, and we've got no choice but to cut down on what we're doing. But we can do that as long as we think about what we're doing and we work together to do that. So basically, to sum that up, we live on a planet with finite resources. We can't continue to have continuous economic growth based on the use of those finite resources. So to paraphrase Donella Meadows, we need to radically alter our economic model from one that's focused on continuous economic growth to one that can allow humanity to thrive and prosper in balance with the Earth's natural resources. So why am I standing here harking on about a book that was published 50 years ago? Because although the book was ridiculed by economists at the time, the empirical data gathered since 1972 has demonstrated that we're following the predicted trajectories scarily well. Next question. So how come we're in 2025 and we have in the UK an entire government agenda focused purely on growth? How is this the case even when mainstream diplomats like Antonio Gutierrez are questioning growth for the sake of growth? The problem, as I said at the start of this talk, talk is a lack of creative thinking to imagine an alternative. We're creatures of stories. It's how we explain the world. And the story of growth has been extraordinarily compelling. It's all about more, more, more. But we need a new narrative, a new story, and crucially, one that's not framed around what we'll lose, but what we'll gain. I'm going to share some examples of creative organisations and projects that are making a real impact at a local community level to demonstrate firsthand the positive difference creative thinking and doing can make to a place. So this is an organisation called Dingy Butterflies. It's based in Bensham and Saltwell. We work over there, so just over the way in Gateshead, just over the river. And they work with communities to develop and improve creative skills, to create pride among residents, to increase opportunities for people to have a voice in local decision making. They did a project called Bees of Bensham, and they worked with their diverse community members to develop an interest in the natural world in the local community. So they did activities like make bee hotels and seed bombs, produced a podcast, published a book, organised a symposium, they delivered accredited training. And the aim of all of that was to build a deeper connection and sustainable relationship between the bees, plants, lands and people. This is the Centre for Artistic Activism, and they're based in New York. And they really specialise in making social and environmental change more effective and creative. And they do this by training and advising organisations, grant makers and individuals to excel in activism and advocacy through creativity and culture. They work with an organisation called Cleveland Vote, and that was set up to increase voter registration and participation. So they plan to launch a new initiative where Ohio artists and advocates join forces to create powerful, imaginative ways to help their communities to protect democracy. Back to the UK, this is an organisation called Civic Square. They're based in Birmingham. And again, they're a creative community organisation focusing on building and investing in social and civic infrastructure. And they're working with the Donut Economic Action Labs approach, all about transformative action, working on a framework that balances planetary boundaries with that social need. And this is an organisation called Wellbeing. This is based probably like 10 or 15 more minutes walk from this very building. It's a community group and cooperative, and it was developed from a creative participatory action research project. And they're working to improve the local neighbourhood through social events, educational activities, planting and growing food, youth activities, all of this sort of work, with the aim of having community members play an active role in shaping the life in Shieldfield. They've worked together to develop a strategic plan. Recent developments, there have been a lot of recent developments in that area, and there's been a lack of consultation with that local community. Shieldfield's notably absent from local planning policy. So they developed a community plan to help tackle this, because the members of Wellbeing want to live in a community where priorities are decided by the community and not solely by council or developers. If we're working to creatively imagine a world where continuous economic growth isn't the aim, if we're envisioning a future that, as Kate Raworth, economist, author and co-founder of the Donut Economics Action Lab says, that we can provide for every person's needs while safeguarding the living world on which we all depend, then we're talking about a real deep societal change. So for this to work, we need engagement and buy-in from across the whole spectrum of society. So those methodologies of participation, co-creation, and just having fun that Wellbeing at Civic Square, Centre for Artistic Activism, and Dingy Butterflies all exemplify are essential to this. It's about flipping the script. It's about changing the narrative, and it's about visioning a new future, a new destination, about making the journey to that destination so awesome that people want to come along with us. Thank you very much.